Picture this: a brilliant aviator vanishes without a trace over the vast Pacific Ocean, leaving behind only crackling radio transmissions and whispers of conspiracy. Amelia Earhart's disappearance in 1937 isn't just a footnote in history, it's a gaping hole in our understanding, a puzzle that has taunted detectives, historians, and armchair sleuths for generations. And yet, it's just one thread in a tapestry of enigmas so baffling, they defy logic, science, and sometimes even belief. What if I told you that behind the curtain of our textbooks lie secrets so strange, they rewrite everything we thought we knew about the past? From ancient civilizations that mastered impossible feats of engineering to cryptic codes that still guard their creators' intentions, history is littered with mysteries that refuse to surrender their truths. Consider the Voynich Manuscript, a book written in an alphabet no one can decipher, filled with illustrations of plants that don't exist, or the chilling fate of the Roanoke colony, where an entire settlement vanished, leaving behind only a single word carved into a tree: Croatoan. These aren't just stories, they're invitations to step into the unknown, to question the boundaries of what we accept as fact. And today, we're embarking on a journey through 30 of the most jaw-dropping, spine-tingling, unsolved mysteries ever recorded. But this isn't just a list, it's an excavation. We'll sift through evidence, untangle wild theories, and confront the unsettling possibility that some truths might remain forever out of reach. Why do these stories grip us so deeply? Maybe it's the thrill of the unsolved, the tantalizing idea that history still holds secrets waiting for the right mind to crack them open. Or perhaps it's the eerie reminder that, in a world obsessed with answers, some questions linger like ghosts, whispering that the past is far stranger than we've been taught. So, if you're ready to peer into the shadows where history's greatest riddles dwell, press play and let's unravel the impossible together. In the late 16th century, a group of 115 men, women, and children stepped ashore on Roanoke Island, a strip of land off the coast of what we now call North Carolina. These were the first English settlers attempting to carve out a permanent home in the New World, led by Governor John White. But when White returned from a supply trip to England 3 years later, he found the settlement eerily empty: no bodies, no signs of struggle, just abandoned houses and a single word carved into a wooden post: Croatoan. The name belonged to a nearby island and a tribe of Native Americans who lived there, but the settlers were never seen again. Among the missing was Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas, whose fate has haunted historians for centuries. What happened to the so-called lost colony? Theories range from the plausible to the chilling. Some believe the settlers assimilated with the Croatoan people, blending into their communities to survive. Fragments of European artifacts found among Native American settlements lend weight to this idea. Others suggest a darker end: massacre, starvation, or even a desperate, failed attempt to sail back to England in makeshift boats. Then there are the wilder speculations: Spanish soldiers attacking from Florida, supernatural forces, or even an early alien abduction. The truth is, we may never know for certain. Modern archaeology has given us tantalizing clues but no definitive answers. Excavations on Roanoke and neighboring Hatteras Island have uncovered European pottery, weapon parts, and even a signet ring that might have belonged to a settler. Yet the full story remains just out of reach, buried beneath layers of time and legend. It's a mystery that refuses to die, partly because it represents something bigger: the fragility of human ambition, the unpredictability of history, and the unsettling idea that entire communities can vanish without a trace. The word Croatoan isn't just a clue, it's a riddle, a taunt from the past, daring us to solve it, and 400 years later we're still trying. Locked away in Yale University's Voynich Library is a book that shouldn't exist, a 240-page manuscript written in a language no one recognizes, filled with drawings of plants that defy biology and constellations that don't match any known night sky. The Voynich Manuscript, carbon dated to the early 15th century, is perhaps the most stubborn puzzle in the history of cryptography. Its pages crackle with urgency, herbal concoctions, astrological diagrams, and nude women bathing in what might be some kind of liquid green architecture. But every attempt to crack its code has slammed into a wall. Even the Nazis' top codebreakers, who intercepted it during World War II, surrendered in frustration. What makes the Voynich so tantalizing isn't just its unreadable text but the precision of its madness. The script flows too fluidly to be random gibberish, with statistical patterns matching real languages, yet not a single word has been definitively translated. The illustrations plunge deeper into the absurd, roots that resemble animal organs, flowers with impossible symmetries, and a fold-out section of what might be a microscopic view of something. Some believe it's a pharmacopoeia for unknown medicinal plants, while others see an alchemist's notebook hiding the secret to turning lead into gold. The most compelling suspect, Edward Kelly, a notorious 16th-century con artist and spirit medium, who claimed to channel angels in a language called Enochian. His frauds had the same theatrical flair as the manuscript's pages, but no direct link has ever been proven. Modern technology has only deepened the mystery. In 2017, a Canadian AI team claimed their algorithm decoded snippets as a form of ancient Hebrew, suggesting the text might be a creative cipher. But linguists quickly poked holes in the theory, pointing out that the translation produced mostly disjointed phrases like farmer light and empty head. Meanwhile, radiocarbon dating confirms the vellum is genuinely medieval, ruling out a modern hoax, yet the possibility remains that some Renaissance trickster crafted an elaborate nonsense book to swindle a wealthy patron. But here's the twist: the Voynich might not be meant to be read at all. Some scholars argue it's a corpus hermeticum, a sacred object designed to evoke mystery rather than convey information. The act of grappling with its secrets, they say, was the whole point, a meditation on the limits of human knowledge. Whether it's a lost language, an alchemical hoax, or something far stranger, the manuscript's grip on us hasn't loosened. 6 centuries later, it still whispers the same taunt: look closer. The answer's right there, just beyond your reach. The Atlantic Ocean stretched endlessly under a cloudless December sky in 1872, when the crew of the British brigantine Dei Gratia spotted a ship adrift near the Azores. As they drew closer, they recognized her, the Mary Celeste, a 2-masted merchant vessel that had left New York a month earlier, but something was terribly wrong. No one hailed them from the deck, no hands adjusted the sails, which hung oddly, half-shredded by the wind. Boarding the ship, the Dei Gratia's crew found breakfast dishes still on the table, children's toys scattered near a crib, and the ship's logbook lying open, the last entry dated 10 days prior. The cargo of industrial alcohol sat undisturbed, the hull was seaworthy, and there was enough food and water for 6 months. But the Mary Celeste's 10 passengers and crew had vanished without a trace. What happened aboard that ship remains one of the maritime world's most haunting riddles. The lifeboat was missing, suggesting a deliberate, hurried departure. A sword was found near the captain's quarters, its blade stained, but with what? The ship's papers were gone, save for the logbook. At first glance, it seemed like a classic pirate attack, but nothing of value had been taken. Theories spiraled. Maybe the crew mutinied, or a seaquake spooked them into abandoning ship. One persistent myth claimed fumes from the alcohol cargo caused an explosion, but investigators found no evidence of fire or chemical residue. Even Arthur Conan Doyle, years before creating Sherlock Holmes, spun a fictional tale of murder aboard the Mary Celeste, fueling public fascination but muddying the facts. Modern forensic techniques have only deepened the intrigue. Computer recreations of the ship's final days suggest a perfect storm of bad luck, a faulty chronometer throwing them off course, a sudden waterspout, or even a failed bilge pump causing the captain to misjudge the ship's sinking risk. Some point to the sword's placement as evidence of a struggle, while others argue it could have been used to pry open a jammed hatch, the most plausible theory. A combination of human error and panic, perhaps the crew, fearing an imminent explosion from the alcohol vapors, evacuated in chaos only to watch helplessly as the perfectly intact Mary Celeste drifted away, leaving them to drown in the open boat. Yet the absence of bodies or a distress signal keeps the door open to wilder possibilities: time warps, sea monsters, even abduction by extraterrestrials. The truth, much like the ship's missing crew, remains just out of reach. The Mary Celeste endures as a cautionary tale, a reminder that the ocean keeps its secrets well. Every detail we uncover only tightens the knot, proving that sometimes the most unsettling mysteries aren't about what we find, but what disappears without explanation. It began with a single woman, a Strasbourg housewife named Frau Trophea, stepping into the summer heat of July 1518 and starting to dance. Not a joyful jig or a celebratory twirl, but a frenzied, jerking motion she couldn't stop. Within days, dozens more joined her, their limbs thrashing uncontrollably in the town square as if pulled by invisible strings. By August, the crowd had swelled to over 400 people, their feet pounding the cobblestones until their shoes split and their bare soles bled. Some collapsed from exhaustion, their hearts giving out mid-step, while others danced for weeks without pause, their screams mingling with the gasps of horrified onlookers. This was the dancing plague of 1518, one of history's most baffling epidemics, a fever of movement with no cure, no explanation, and no clear end. Contemporary accounts paint a scene straight from a nightmare. Chroniclers describe dancers with foaming mouths and wild eyes, their bodies writhing as if possessed. Town records show magistrates even hired musicians and built wooden stages, believing the afflicted needed to dance it out, a strategy that only fueled the chaos. Physicians of the time blamed hot blood or an imbalance of humors, prescribing everything from leeches to exorcisms, but modern scholars have deeper, darker theories. One leading suspect, ergot poisoning, a fungal infection found in rye bread that can trigger hallucinations, convulsions, and a burning sensation in the limbs, symptoms eerily similar to the dancer's agony. Others point to mass psychogenic illness, a form of collective hysteria where stress and superstition merge into physical symptoms. Strasbourg was reeling from famine, disease, and religious upheaval that year. Perhaps the dancing was a desperate, subconscious revolt against suffering. Period artwork captures the surreal horror of the event. Woodcuts from the era show figures mid-collapse, their faces twisted in pain, while priests wave crucifixes at them. One chilling illustration depicts a skeletal figure playing the flute, a possible nod to medieval fears of the dance of death, where mortality was imagined as a piper leading the doomed. But here's the strangest twist: the plague wasn't unique. Similar outbreaks struck across Europe for centuries, from the Rhine Valley to Madagascar, suggesting something deeper in the human psyche or environment was at work. Was it poison, mass delusion, a neurological disorder we've yet to name? The truth may lie somewhere between biology and belief, where fear and physiology collide. Strasbourg's dancers left no diaries, only footprints, ghostly echoes of a mystery that still twitches at the edges of our understanding. Their story forces us to ask, what happens when the body rebels not against illness, but against reality itself? At 7:17 in the morning on June 30th, 1908, a fireball brighter than the sun ripped across the Siberian sky near the Podkamennaya Tunguska River. Eyewitnesses described a column of blue light splitting the heavens, followed by a shockwave so powerful it knocked people off their feet 40 miles away. Reindeer herders saw entire forests ignite in an instant, while the explosion's thunder echoed across continents, registering on barometers as far as England. When scientists finally reached the remote blast site 19 years later, They found over 800 square miles of wilderness flattened, 80 million trees fanned outward like matchsticks, their bark stripped and branches scorched in a radial pattern pointing to ground zero. But here's what they didn't find: a crater. The Tunguska event remains the largest recorded impact in human history, yet the absence of physical debris has spawned decades of competing theories. The leading explanation: a stony meteoroid or icy comet fragment exploded 3 to 6 miles above Earth's surface, unleashing energy equivalent to a 12-megaton bomb, nearly 1,000 times more powerful than Hiroshima. Computer models suggest the heat of atmospheric entry caused the object to vaporize in a cataclysmic airburst, leaving no substantial fragments. But skeptics note the lack of extraterrestrial material in soil samples, fueling alternative explanations. Declassified Soviet files reveal one chilling Cold War-era hypothesis: an accidental test of Nikola Tesla's rumored death ray, a wireless energy weapon he'd allegedly boasted could split the Earth like an apple. While no evidence ties Tesla to the event, his Wardenclyffe tower, capable of transmitting electrical currents through the atmosphere, was operational just months before the blast. Satellite images of the blast zone add eerie context. The scarred landscape shows trees aligned in a butterfly-shaped pattern, consistent with a Madeira explosion's dual shockwaves. Yet certain anomalies defy conventional wisdom, like patches of accelerated tree growth in the decades after, possibly caused by radiation or genetic mutations. Even stranger, reports from nearby villages describe nights so bright after the event that people could read newspapers outdoors at midnight, suggesting atmospheric disturbances lasting weeks. Was it cosmic bad luck or something more sinister? The truth might lie buried in Siberia's permafrost or lost in the pages of classified files we've yet to uncover. What makes Tunguska unforgettable isn't just the scale of destruction, but the lingering question mark hovering over it, a reminder that sometimes the universe lobs curveballs even science can't catch. Deep in the misty highlands of Roman Britain, an entire army evaporated from history. The 9th Legion, nicknamed Hispana for its Spanish origins, was one of Rome's most feared fighting forces, 5,000 men strong with a battle record stretching back to Julius Caesar's conquests. But around the year 120 AD, something happened. Records show the legion was stationed at York, a key fortress guarding the empire's northern frontier. Then abruptly, all mention of them disappears from Roman military rosters. No victory monuments, no letters home, just silence where there should have been 5,000 voices. Archaeology adds layers to the mystery. Recent excavations at a Scottish fort near Aberdeen uncovered a trove of 9th Legion artifacts, spearheads, armor fittings, even a ceremonial cavalry mask, all buried under what appears to be deliberate demolition debris. This lines up with Roman historian Cassius Dio's brief mention of a catastrophic British revolt around this time, where tribes cut to pieces an entire legion. But here's where the trail twists. Other 9th Legion stamps later surfaced in the Netherlands, and a tombstone bearing their emblem was found in present-day Jordan, suggesting at least some soldiers survived. Or were reassigned under mysterious circumstances. Battle reenactors clad in replica Lorica segmentata armor demonstrate how disciplined Roman formations might have crumbled in the Caledonian fog. The native Picts knew the terrain intimately, using guerrilla tactics that turned the legion's greatest strength, their rigid formations, into a fatal weakness. Imagine armored men slipping in peat bogs, their vision obscured by torrential rain while enemies struck from the heather with poisoned spears. Yet even this dramatic scenario can't fully explain the 9th's fate, because Rome always recovered its dead. The absence of mass graves or recovered eagle standards, sacred symbols no legion would surrender willingly, leaves historians debating whether they were annihilated, disbanded in disgrace, or simply renamed to hide a military embarrassment. Theories branch wildly. Some scholars argue the ninth was quietly transferred to suppress rebellions in Judea, pointing to that Jordanian tombstone. Others suggest they fell victim to Emperor Hadrian's military reforms, merged into other units when he famously drew his wall across Britain. Then there's the haunting folk memory preserved in Scottish ballads, telling of a ghost legion that wandered into the Highlands never to return. Modern radar scans have identified unnatural mounds near the River Tay that could conceal remnants of a lost battle, but until someone digs, the earth keeps its secrets. What makes this mystery endure isn't just the vanished soldiers, but what their disappearance represents, the fraying edges of an empire's power. Rome's grip on Britain was always tenuous, and the ninth's fate may have been the warning sign that made Hadrian say enough. Their story lives on in curious places, from Rosemary Sutcliffe's novel, The Eagle of the Ninth, to the whispered warnings of Scottish guides. Don't walk the moors at dusk unless you want to hear the clank of phantom armor still marching home. On August 15, 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio recorded something that shouldn't exist, a 72-second burst of sound so perfectly aligned with predictions of extraterrestrial signals. The astronomer who discovered it scrawled, "Wow." In red pen on the printout, the signal, originating near the Chi Sagittarii star group, pulsed at exactly 1420 MHz, a frequency scientists had pinpointed as ideal for interstellar communication because it's naturally quiet, with minimal interference from cosmic background noise. But what made the WOW signal unforgettable wasn't just its precision. It was the code it left behind, the string 6EQUJ5, a sequence representing the signal's intensity fluctuations, peaking 30 times stronger than the surrounding static before vanishing forever. The Big Ear telescope, operated by Ohio State University as part of SETI's search for alien intelligence, wasn't built to track moving objects, which left scientists with agonizing uncertainty. By the time they tried to relocate the signal, it had disappeared, no repeat, no echo, no trace. Follow-up scans of the same patch of sky over decades yielded nothing but silence, fueling theories ranging from a distant alien beacon to a classified military transmission. Then, in 2016, an astronomer proposed a startlingly simple explanation: a passing comet's hydrogen cloud. Two icy comets, 2665 and 2667, had been in the vicinity that night, their massive hydrogen envelopes potentially reflecting sunlight in a way that mimicked an artificial signal. But critics pounced. The telescope's design should have filtered out such interference, and comets don't explain why the signal matched interstellar expectations so precisely. The original printout, now preserved like a relic, tells its own cryptic story. The 6EQUJ5 sequence is circled in red, each character representing the signal's rising and falling intensity on a scale so specific it's practically a fingerprint. Modern software recreations show how the signal spiked, held steady, then dropped off, a pattern unlike any known natural phenomenon. Even the duration, 72 seconds, fits eerily well with the telescope's field of view, as if the source knew exactly how long it would take to sweep across the receiver. So was it a cosmic coincidence, a technical glitch, or something far more profound? The WOW signal endures because it sits at the intersection of science and wonder, a fleeting moment when the universe seemed to whisper hello before slipping back into the dark. Every attempt to explain it away only tightens the knot, leaving us to stare at those 6 enigmatic characters and wonder, if it wasn't them, what was? In the quiet desert town of Taos, New Mexico, something buzzes beneath the surface, literally. Since the early 1990s, residents have reported hearing a persistent, maddening sound they call the Taos Hum, a low-frequency drone like a distant diesel engine idling that never stops. Unlike ordinary noise pollution, this hum has no identifiable source. It penetrates walls, follows people indoors, and for roughly 2% of the population, the so-called hearers, it becomes an inescapable torment. Some describe it as a pulsing vibration in their bones. Others compare it to the ominous thrum of a UFO hovering just out of sight, the strangest part. Most people can't hear it at all. Scientists first descended on Taos in 1993, armed with microphones and spectrographs determined to unmask the hum. Yet their equipment detected nothing unusual. The sound, it seemed, existed only in the heads of those who reported it, or at least outside the range of standard recording devices. This discrepancy fueled a rift between competing theories. Geophysicists pointed to microseisms' subtle vibrations from shifting tectonic plates, while others suspected secret military experiments. Taos sits near Los Alamos National Laboratory, home to advanced radar and energy projects. Could the hum be an accidental byproduct of classified technology? Declassified Cold War documents reveal that the U.S. Navy once studied infrasound sound waves below 20 Hz as a potential weapon capable of inducing nausea or even fear in targets. But the psychological angle is equally compelling. Neurologists note that some hearers suffer from tonal tinnitus, a condition where the brain generates phantom sounds to compensate for hearing loss. Yet many Taos hearers have perfect hearing, and the hum's localized nature, its strongest in specific neighborhoods, hints at an external origin. Audio engineers have tried to replicate the sound based on witness descriptions, blending frequencies between 30 and 80 Hz. The result is unsettling, a throbbing bass tone that feels less like sound and more like pressure, creeping into your skull and refusing to leave. One resident, a retired music teacher, swears the hum follows lunar cycles, spiking in intensity during full moons. Others claim it vanishes when they leave town, only to resume the moment they return. The town's Native American elders offer a different perspective. They speak of underground spirits, ancient beings stirring beneath the earth. Modern technology leans into the mystery too. In 2018, researchers proposed that electromagnetic hypersensitivity might explain why only some people detect the hum, possibly triggered by underground power lines or rare atmospheric conditions. Taos's enigma lingers because it defies categorization. Is it geological, military, psychological, or something else entirely? The hum's elusive nature makes it the perfect metaphor for the unknown, a reminder that even in our hyper-connected world, some phenomena slip through the cracks of understanding, vibrating just beyond the edge of perception. For those who hear it, the hum isn't just a sound. It's a question mark etched into their daily lives, whispering that reality might be far stranger than it seems. And perhaps that's why it captivates us. The Taos hum isn't just a mystery, it's a mirror. Depending on who you ask, it reflects our fascination with the unseen, our distrust of authority, or the quiet terror of realizing that sometimes the world doesn't make sense. Whatever the truth may be, one thing's certain: in Taos, the desert doesn't just whisper, it hums. Tucked away in the basement of Baghdad's National Museum of Iraq sits a cluster of unassuming clay jars, terracotta vessels no taller than a coffee mug, each sealed with asphalt and fitted with an iron rod protruding from the top. Discovered in 1936 near the ancient city of Ctesiphon, these 2,000-year-old artifacts might look like ordinary storage containers at first glance. But when archaeologists peered inside, they found something extraordinary. The jars contained traces of acidic residue, and the iron rods showed signs of corrosion consistent with exposure to an electrolyte. In other words, these weren't just pots, they might have been the world's first batteries. Dubbed the Baghdad Battery, these devices have sparked fierce debate. The most popular theory suggests they were used for electroplating, coating objects with thin layers of gold or silver using an electrical current. Ancient Mesopotamian artisans were masters of gilding, and experiments with modern replicas show the jars could produce around 1 volt of electricity when filled with vinegar or lemon juice, enough to electroplate small items. Imagine a goldsmith dipping a statue into a solution, the battery's current slowly bonding precious metals to its surface. It's a tantalizing idea, one that would rewrite the history of technology by placing electrical knowledge centuries earlier than previously thought. Yet not everyone's convinced. Skeptics argue there's no direct evidence linking the jars to electroplating, no gilded artifacts found alongside them, no wires or connectors. Instead, some scholars propose they were sacred objects, perhaps used in religious rituals. The asphalt seal could have held incense, and the iron rod might have been a conductor for static electricity, ancient priests delivering divine shocks to awed worshippers. Others suggest they were simply storage for sacred scrolls, the acidic residue accidental from decomposed parchment. The mystery deepens when you consider modern reconstructions. Engineers have built precise replicas, filling them with grape juice or citric acid, and hooked them up to small devices. The results: enough power to light a faint LED or even drive a simple clock. It's not much by today's standards, but it proves the design works. So why didn't this technology spread? Why no records, no larger batteries, no evolution of the idea? Perhaps the knowledge was lost, or maybe the batteries were rare, reserved for temple elites. What makes the Baghdad Battery so compelling isn't just the question of what it was, but why it seemingly stands alone. No other culture of the time left behind similar devices. No ancient texts mention electrical experiments. It's a glitch in the historical record, a blip of brilliance that either hints at a forgotten chapter of innovation or a case of modern wishful thinking. Whatever the truth, these humble jars whisper a provocative possibility that the spark of human ingenuity might have flickered in unexpected ways long before we thought possible. And that's a mystery worth its voltage. Beneath the crystal-clear waters off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901, sponge divers stumbled upon the wreck of a Roman cargo ship. Among the corroded bronze statues and shattered pottery, they found a lump of greenish metal that looked like it had been through a fire. But when archaeologists cracked it open, they realized it wasn't junk, it was a machine. A machine so advanced it shouldn't have existed for another 1,000 years. The Antikythera Mechanism, as it came to be known, was a shoebox-sized device crammed with at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, each precisely cut to mesh with the others like the innards of a modern clock. But this wasn't just any clock. X-ray scans revealed inscriptions tracking the movements of the sun, moon, and 5 known planets, a celestial calculator capable of predicting eclipses down to the hour and modeling the irregular orbits of heavenly bodies with shocking accuracy. The front dial even featured a miniature Zodiac calendar, while the back displayed a 4-year cycle of athletic games, including the Olympics. This wasn't a tool. It was a cosmos in a box. What baffles historians isn't just its complexity, but its isolation. The mechanism dates to around 150 BCE, yet nothing remotely like it appears again until the 14th century mechanical clocks of Europe. How did such brilliance vanish for over a millennium? Some argue it was the product of a lost school of engineering, possibly linked to Archimedes, whose legendary planetarium was said to imitate the motions of the heavens. Others suspect it was a one-off masterpiece crafted for a wealthy patron who took its secrets to the grave. The shipwreck's location along a trade route between Rhodes and Rome hints it may have been loot from a conquered Greek city, destined for some senator's private collection before the sea claimed it. Modern reconstructions bring the mechanism's genius to life. Engineers have built working replicas showing how turning a single crank could animate the entire gear train, with pointers sweeping across dials to show the moon's phase or the date of the next solar eclipse. The most mind-bending feature, a differential gear, a component thought to have been invented in the 18th century, that compensated for the moon's elliptical orbit by varying its speed automatically. Yet the Antikythera Mechanism's true mystery isn't how it worked, but why its technology died with its creators. Was it suppressed by an empire that saw no use for stargazing gadgets? Or was it simply too expensive, too fragile, too ahead of its time to survive the collapse of the ancient world? Whatever the answer, this corroded relic forces us to rewrite history, proving that the spark of human ingenuity sometimes flares brightly only to be swallowed by the tides of time. Somewhere between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico lies a stretch of ocean so notorious, its name alone sends shivers down the spine: the Bermuda Triangle. Over the past century, this 500,000 square mile swath of the Atlantic has been blamed for swallowing ships and planes whole, leaving behind no wreckage, no distress signals, just eerie silence. But how much of its fearsome reputation is fact, and how much is sensationalized fiction? Let's navigate these murky waters together, separating myth from measurable phenomena. The legend truly took hold in 1945 with the disappearance of Flight 195 U.S. Navy Avenger bombers on a routine training mission. The squadron's final radio transmissions crackle with confusion, the lead pilot famously muttering, "We can't be sure of any direction. Even the ocean doesn't look as it should." A rescue plane sent after them vanished too, fueling theories of paranormal interference. Yet official investigations point to human error and navigational failures. The squadron's leader was inexperienced, compasses malfunctioned, and the aircraft were dangerously low on fuel when they likely plunged into rough seas. Still, the absence of wreckage keeps speculation alive. Could something stranger have happened? Science offers less sinister but equally fascinating explanations. Some researchers point to methane hydrate eruptions, massive bubbles of gas rising from the seabed that could theoretically reduce water density enough to sink ships without a trace. Oceanographers have mapped vast deposits of these frozen gas crystals beneath the triangle's floor, and experiments show how sudden releases could create frothing, turbulent waters. Others highlight the area's notorious weather, where the Gulf Stream's warm currents collide with unpredictable storms, generating rogue waves tall enough to capsize even large vessels in moments. Yet here's the twist: insurance data reveals no statistically higher incidence of disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle compared to other heavily trafficked oceanic regions. Lloyd's of London doesn't charge extra premiums for ships passing through, and the U.S. Coast Guard treats its hazards no differently than other stretches of open water. So why the enduring myth? Much of the mystery can be traced to authors in the 1950s and 60s who cherry-picked cases while ignoring simpler explanations, a classic example of confirmation bias. Plot the triangle's victims on a map, and you'll notice they're scattered across decades and hundreds of miles, lacking the geographic clustering you'd expect from a true anomaly. Perhaps the Bermuda Triangle's greatest trick isn't vanishing ships, it's how it exposes our hunger for mystery. In a world where satellites track every container ship and black boxes record a plane's final moments, the idea that some corners of the Earth still defy understanding is irresistible. The truth may be less thrilling than the legends, but it's no less compelling. Sometimes the real monsters aren't lurking in the ocean's depths, but in the depths of our own imagination. And that's a mystery no sonar can map. In the quiet dimness of Turin Cathedral's chapel rests a 14-foot-long linen cloth, its faint sepia tones revealing the ghostly imprint of a crucified man. The Shroud of Turin, believed by millions to be the burial cloth of Jesus Christ, is perhaps the most scrutinized artifact in human history. To the naked eye, it appears to bear a negative image, a hauntingly detailed figure with wounds matching biblical accounts of the crucifixion, a spear puncture in the side, nail marks through the wrists, and lacerations consistent with Roman flagrum whips. But is this divine documentation or an elaborate medieval hoax? The debate rages across laboratories and pulpits alike, hinging on three critical pieces of evidence: contested carbon dating, botanical clues, and a bizarre photographic anomaly no one can fully explain. First, the dating controversy. In 1988, radiocarbon tests by three independent labs placed the shroud's origins between 1260 and 1390 AD, squarely in the Middle Ages. Skeptics declared the case closed, a clever forgery created during Europe's relic manufacturing boom. But then the objections poured in. Researchers noted the tested sample came from a corner that might have been patched after a fire in the 1500s, skewing results. Others highlighted how bacterial contamination or fungal growth on the fibers could have distorted the dating. Fast forward to 2022, when a groundbreaking chemical study proposed that a 14th century earthquake might have emitted neutron radiation, yes, radiation altering the shroud's carbon signature. Suddenly, the medieval forgery narrative wasn't so airtight. Then there's the pollen. Dr. Max Frey, a Swiss criminologist, scraped dust particles from the shroud in the 1970s and identified 58 plant species, including several native to Judea. Most compelling, Gundelia tournefortii, a thorny plant found near Jerusalem whose pollen grains clustered around the crown of thorns marks. Critics argue pollen could have settled on the cloth anytime during its storied journey from the Middle East to Europe. But supporters counter that the specific mix mirrors 1st century Jerusalem's flora with uncanny precision, a detail unlikely for a medieval European artist to replicate. Now, the image itself, a puzzle that defies replication. In 1978, NASA scientists analyzed the shroud using VP8 image enhancers and made a mind-bending discovery. The faint stains aren't paint or pigment but a chemical change in the linen's topmost fibers, as if the cloth was burned by a brief, intense burst of light. Even stranger, the image behaves like a perfect three-dimensional negative. When photogrammetrist Giovanni Tamburelli enhanced it with early computer modeling, he found the shading corresponded exactly to the distance between cloth and body, something no medieval artist could have calculated. Modern attempts to recreate the shroud's effects using acids, vapors, even ultraviolet lasers produce crude facsimiles at best. The shroud's mysteries multiply under scrutiny. Bloodstains, confirmed as type AB by multiple studies, contain high levels of bilirubin consistent with severe trauma. The weave matches 1st century Palestinian textiles, not medieval European ones. And the figures' elongated proportions, they align with ancient Syrian funerary art, a stylistic quirk unknown in 14th century Italy. Yet for all the scientific intrigue, the shroud's power lies in what it represents, a tangible link to history's most influential execution or an audacious centuries-old deception that continues to outwit technology. Whether divine or devised, it challenges our assumptions about the past and the limits of what we can ever truly know. Between 1968 and 1969, a faceless terror stalked Northern California, a killer who turned murder into a macabre game. The Zodiac, as he called himself, didn't just take lives, he weaponized mystery, sending taunting letters to newspapers filled with bragging details of his crimes and ciphers. These weren't ordinary codes, but intricate puzzles mixing symbols, crosshairs, and twisted poetry, daring authorities to catch him. 4 confirmed victims, possibly dozens more, and then silence. The Zodiac vanished, leaving behind a trail of blood and ink that's fueled obsession for over half a century. But who was he, and why, despite decades of investigation, does his identity remain one of America's most chilling cold cases? Let's start with the ciphers, the killer's pride and joy. His first, known as the 408 cipher, took a full year to crack, revealing a narcissistic rant. "I like killing people because it is so much fun." But 2 others, the infamous 340 cipher and the recently solved Zodiac Killer Cipher 13, resisted decoding until breakthroughs in 2020. Cryptographers finally unraveled 13's message. "I hope you are having lots of fun trying to catch me." The tone is almost playful, dripping with the same smug arrogance that defined his letters. What's chilling isn't just the words, but the realization that every solved cipher reinforces how carefully he crafted his persona, a predator who craved attention as much as violence. Now, the suspects. Arthur Lee Allen remains the most infamous, a convicted child molester whose life eerily mirrored the Zodiac's known habits. Friends recalled him owning the same rare brand of wingtip shoes mentioned in police reports, and a search of his home revealed watches with crosshair symbols identical to the killer's letters. But here's the catch: his DNA didn't match partial samples from the Zodiac's envelopes, and handwriting analysis ruled him out. Then there's Ross Sullivan, a violent psychiatric patient who worked near the first murder site and bore a striking resemblance to police sketches. Or Lawrence Kane, a Navy vet with cryptography training whose movements aligned with the killings. Each suspect fits pieces of the puzzle, yet none slot neatly into place. The Zodiac's own words might hold the darkest clues. In one letter, he boasted about disguising his handwriting, suggesting he could be right under your nose. Another included a bloody scrap of a victim's shirt as proof, signed with a crossed circle symbol he called his signature. Forensic linguists note his shifting writing style, sometimes articulate, other times riddled with misspellings, as though he was toying with profilers. Recreating these letters allowed sends shivers down the spine, especially the cold calculation in lines like, "I shall no longer announce to anyone when I commit my murders." Recent breakthroughs tilt the scales toward lesser-known suspects. In 2022, a team of retired detectives named Gary Francis Post, a deceased Air Force mechanic with a history of violence. They cited matching physical scars, his access to remote crime sites, and most tantalizingly claimed his name could be anagrammed from an unsolved cipher. Yet without definitive DNA confirmation, the theory remains speculative. Meanwhile, genealogists are applying the same techniques that identified the Golden State Killer, hoping trace DNA from stamps or envelopes might finally unmask the Zodiac. What makes this case endure isn't just the unsolved murders, it's the psychological warfare. The Zodiac didn't just kill, he curated his own myth, blending horror with a perverse kind of showmanship. Every cipher cracked, every suspect scrutinized, brings us closer to the truth, or does it? Perhaps the scariest possibility isn't that we'll never know, but that the answer has been hiding in plain sight all along, another puzzle piece waiting to slide into place. Until then, the Zodiac's laughter echoes through every unsolved code, every faded police file, a ghost still playing his game, and the board remains open. Off the fog-drenched coast of Nova Scotia lies a small, unassuming island with a legend so persistent it's consumed lives and fortunes for over 2 centuries. Oak Island, a patch of land barely a mile long, hides what might be the world's most elaborate and maddening treasure trap. It all began in 1795, when local teen Daniel Maginnis stumbled upon a peculiar circular depression in the ground, surrounded by old oak trees with unnatural notches carved into their trunks. Beneath the dirt, he and his friends uncovered layers of flagstones, wooden platforms, and something far more sinister, a labyrinth of flood tunnels designed to drown anyone who dug too deep. Thus began the saga of the Money Pit, a vertical shaft so booby-trapped it's thwarted every excavation attempt since. What makes this hole in the ground so tantalizing? First, there's the infamous 90-foot stone, a slab pulled from the pit in the early 1800s inscribed with cryptic symbols, possibly a cipher. Though the original stone vanished, 19th century transcriptions suggest it read, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds lie buried. Then there's the staggering engineering. As diggers descended, seawater would suddenly rush in through hidden channels, collapsing tunnels and ruining equipment. Modern divers traced these floods to artificial box drains linked to Smith's Cove, where intricate layers of coconut fiber and eelgrass acted as a natural filtration system. Who, in the pre-industrial era, had the expertise or the motive to build something so elaborate? Enter the Knights Templar. Some theorists argue the pit's design mirrors Templar treasure vaults described in medieval texts, suggesting the order smuggled relics like the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail here after their persecution in the 14th century. Others point to pirate captains like William Kidd or Blackbeard, who allegedly admitted to burying loot where none but Satan and myself can find it. The most chilling twist, 6 deaths linked to the pit, including an 1861 explosion that claimed 2 workers, fueling whispers of a curse protecting whatever lies below. Modern excavations read like a high-stakes tech thriller. In 1965, a camera lowered into a borehole captured blurred images of what might be chests or human hands. Sonar scans in 2016 revealed an anomalous void dubbed the Chapel Shaft, while drill cores brought up fragments of parchment, strands of centuries-old hair, and even traces of gold. Yet each breakthrough dissolves into frustration, collapsing walls, legal battles, and financial ruin for investors. The money pit's greatest trick isn't hiding treasure, it's sustaining hope. Whether it's Spanish doubloons, Shakespearean manuscripts, or something far stranger, Oak Island whispers a seductive promise. Dig deeper, risk everything, and you might uncover history's greatest secret. Or, like so many before, you might walk away with nothing but empty pockets and a head full of ghosts. In the frozen Urals of February 1959, 9 experienced Soviet hikers pitched their tent on the slopes of Zodiac, a name that translates ominously to Mountain of the Dead. By morning, they would all be dead under circumstances so bizarre, the case was sealed as top secret for decades. When rescuers finally found the tent, it had been slashed open from the inside, as if the group fled in terror. Footprints led downhill toward the tree line, some barefoot, others clad only in socks unthinkable in -22°F temperatures. Then came the bodies. 1 man's skull was crushed, a woman's tongue was missing, torn from her mouth post-mortem. Others showed radiation traces on their clothing. The official cause, an unknown compelling force, but what force strips skilled mountaineers of survival instinct and leaves a trail of mutilated corpses across the snow? The Dyatlov Pass incident remains a forensic nightmare where every clue spawns new nightmares. Let's reconstruct the scene through modern eyes. Animations based on forensic reports show the tent's fabric ripping outward in frantic bursts, suggesting the hikers awoke in panic. Some ran nearly a mile in pitch darkness before collapsing. 2 victims had fatal chest fractures comparable to the force of a car crash, yet no external bruises. This detail fuels the avalanche theory. A slab of snow could have triggered a katabatic wind, a downward gust powerful enough to smash ribs. But skeptics note the slope wasn't steep enough for such an event, and why would survivors flee instead of digging out buried comrades? The missing tongues point to scavengers, yet animals typically avoid frozen flesh, and no bite marks were found. Then there's the radiation. Geiger counter readings detected gamma-ray exposure on 3 victims' clothes trace levels, but unusual for wilderness hikers. Conspiracy theorists pounced. Was this a covert military test gone wrong? Declassified documents reveal the Soviet Union was indeed testing parachute-retarded bombs in the area, and infrared photos taken weeks later show anomalous heat signatures near the pass. Could a rogue weapon have triggered infrasound waves, inducing panic and internal injuries? Simulations show certain frequencies can cause disorientation and even organ resonance, explaining both the trauma and the irrational flight. Yet the most chilling theory involves the hikers' final photos. Enhanced shots reveal strange, fireball lights in the night sky, while journal entries mention orange spheres, a detail echoed by nearby indigenous Mansi tribes who spoke of evil spirits on the mountain. Were these plasma discharges from Tesla-style experiments, ball lightning, or something else? Scientists recently proposed a rare atmospheric phenomenon called black lightning, where dark plasma formations emit intense radiation bursts. It's a stretch, but so is every other explanation. The truth may lie in a confluence of horrors, an avalanche triggering a chain reaction of hypothermia-induced delirium, compounded by freak weather and opportunistic predation. But the Dyatlov Pass doesn't surrender its secrets easily. Even now, thawing permafrost reveals new bone fragments, and declassified files drip-feed cryptic clues. Whatever happened that night, it wasn't just the cold that killed them, it was fear itself, sharp as the ice cracking under their fleeing feet. And that's a mystery no autopsy can solve. 2,400 years ago, the philosopher Plato penned a story that would outlive empires, the tale of Atlantis, a mighty island nation swallowed by the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he describes a circular metropolis of concentric rings, richer than any civilization, with hot springs, grand canals, and a vast plain yielding crops twice a year. But here's where history blurs into legend. Plato insists Atlantis was real, a cautionary fable about hubris passed down to him from Egyptian priests. So was this a moral allegory, a garbled memory of a real disaster, or something stranger? Modern hunters have scoured the globe for traces, and three leading candidates, Santorini, the Azores, and Africa's Richat structure, each offer tantalizing, if contradictory, clues. Let's start with Santorini, the smoking gun of Bronze Age cataclysms. Around 1600 BCE, this Mediterranean island was home to the Minoans, a seafaring culture whose advanced plumbing and frescoes mirror Plato's descriptions. Then the Thera volcano erupted with a force estimated at 200 megatons, 10 times stronger than Krakatoa. Tsunamis 3 stories tall obliterated coastal cities, while ash blotted out the sun for years. Archaeologists have found Minoan settlements buried under 60 feet of volcanic rock, their artifacts frozen mid-use. Could this be the violent earthquakes and floods that sank Atlantis? Skeptics point out Plato placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules, Gibraltar, but maps from antiquity often misjudge distances. Santorini's layered caldera even resembles Plato's circular city when viewed from space. Now sail 900 miles west to the Azores. This volcanic archipelago straddles the mid-Atlantic ridge where tectonic plates pull apart. In 2018, divers discovered a peculiar underwater structure off the coast of São Miguel, rectangular pillars and a stepped pyramid-like formation at 60 feet depth. Geologists debate whether these are man-made or bizarre lava formations, but coincidentally, Plato described Atlantean temples clad in red, white, and black stone colors matching the Azores volcanic rock. Even creepier, ancient Phoenician tablets speak of a starfall that destroyed a Western empire, while Azorean folklore tells of a sunken kingdom called Açores. Could oral traditions have preserved a 9,000-year-old cataclysm, as Plato claimed? Then there's the Richat structure, an eerie bullseye in the Mauritanian desert, so vast it's visible from orbit. Once dismissed as a meteor crater, geologists now believe it's a natural uplift eroded over millennia. But satellite images reveal something uncanny. Concentric rings matching Plato's dimensions almost exactly, with traces of ancient riverbeds where he described canals. In 2015, researchers found scattered marine fossils here, proof the Sahara was once underwater. The kicker, Plato wrote Atlantis lay near a great plain bordered by mountains, just like Richat's salt flats framed by the Atlas Range. Critics argue he never mentioned desert, but what if shifting climates buried the city in sand instead of swallowing it in waves? Experts remain divided. Historians like Dr. Julia Haynes stress Plato's political motives, Atlantis as allegory for Athenian imperialism. Meanwhile, oceanographers point to sonar anomalies near Cuba and the Bahamas, where divers report smooth stone blocks at depths suggesting they predate rising sea levels 12,000 years ago. CGI reconstructions blend all three theories, a Santorini-like eruption toppling an Azores-based empire, with survivors fleeing to Africa's then fertile plains. Perhaps Atlantis's true power isn't as a place, but as a mirror. Each era rediscovers it in their own image, a warning about climate change, a beacon for lost wisdom, or simply proof that even the greatest civilizations can vanish without a trace. The only certainty, until someone dredges up a street sign reading Atlantis Boulevard, the search will rage on, as relentless as the sea that may have claimed it. The autumn fog clung to Whitacapel's cobblestones in 1888, thick enough to hide a killer. Over 10 weeks, 5 women, perhaps more, were butchered in London's East End with chilling precision, their bodies left like grotesque exhibits in the alleyways. Jack the Ripper wasn't just a murderer, he was a surgeon of terror, carving his way into history with a blade so sharp, so deliberate, that even today the scars haven't faded. Modern forensics have turned those blood-stained streets into a digital playground, yet the Ripper's identity remains as elusive as the shadows he vanished into. Start with the crime scenes mapped in macabre detail. Contemporary police sketches overlay eerily onto Google Earth, showing how the killer navigated the district's labyrinthine courts with intimate knowledge. Mary Ann Nichols, the first canonical victim, was found in Bucks Row, now Durward Street, her throat slashed so deeply she was nearly decapitated. Then Annie Chapman in Hanbury Street, her uterus excised with what one coroner called anatomical knowledge. The darkest tableau, Catherine Eddowes in Mitre Square, her face mutilated, kidneys removed, an apron folded neatly beside her as if the Ripper paused to admire his work. Now the suspects, the case files read like a Victorian melodrama's cast list. There's Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant barber whose erratic behavior landed him in an asylum. Years later, a blood-stained shawl allegedly linked to Eddowes was found in his belongings, though DNA tests in 2014 proved controversial. Then the royal conspiracy, Prince Albert Victor, Queen Victoria's troubled grandson, rumored to have fathered an illegitimate child with a Whitacapel prostitute. Was the Ripper a royal physician like Sir William Gull, silencing scandal with a scalpel? Diaries surfaced in the 1990s purporting to confess as much, but historians dismissed them as hoaxes. Forensic reenactments add chilling context. In 2011, criminologists used UV light to simulate the gaslit alleys, revealing how the Ripper likely lured victims into near-total darkness. Bloodstain analysis suggests he positioned their bodies deliberately, perhaps to delay discovery. But the most haunting breakthrough came in 2017, when a computational linguist analyzed the Ripper's taunting letters, comparing word patterns to period texts. The infamous "From Hell" note, sent with a piece of Eddowes' kidney, showed phrasing quirks common to wait-for-it newspaper journalists of the era. Was Jack a hack reporter crafting his own sensational headlines? The Ripper's legacy isn't just unsolved crimes, it's how he exposed the rot beneath Victorian London's polished veneer. Whitacapel's overcrowded slums, ignored by authorities until the killing's forced action, became a character in the story. Press coverage turned the victims into footnotes, labeling them fallen women while obsessing over the killer's theatrics. Even now, walking those streets at night, you can almost hear the echo of leather-soled boots on wet stone, a reminder that some monsters don't just live in history books. They linger in the spaces between the facts, waiting for someone, anyone, to unmask them. And Jack, he's still one step ahead, stretching across nearly 200 square miles of Peru's arid Pampa Colorado. The Nazca lines are one of archaeology's most arresting riddles, giant etchings in the desert floor so vast they can only be fully appreciated from the air. Drawn between 500 BC and 500 CE by the ancient Nazca culture, these geoglyphs depict everything from spiders and hummingbirds to spirals and trapezoids, some stretching over 1,200 feet long with lines as straight as if drawn by a ruler. The precision is staggering. The condor's wingspan aligns perfectly with the angle of the winter solstice sunrise, while the monkey's coiled tail mirrors the constellation Ursa Major. But how did a civilization without flight create such massive, mathematically precise designs? And more importantly, why? Theories split into two camps, the celestial and the extraterrestrial. Archaeologist Maria Reich, who devoted her life to studying the lines, argued they were a monumental astronomical calendar. Using simple ropes and stakes, the Nazca could have plotted constellations or solstice markers, their desert canvas preserving the knowledge like a Stone Age planetarium. Modern drone surveys support this. The biomorphic glyphs cluster near water sources, suggesting ritual pathways for rain ceremonies. But then there's the other camp. Swiss author Erich von Däniken famously claimed the lines were landing strips for alien spacecraft, pointing to the trapezoidal runways and the fact that many glyphs resemble figures in astronaut suits. Skeptics scoff, yet even NASA has tested rover navigation techniques here, drawn by the terrain's uncanny resemblance to Martian landscapes. Recent LiDAR scans reveal the Nazca didn't just scratch the surface, they moved thousands of tons of rust-colored pebbles to expose lighter subsoil, creating contrast visible for miles. Some trenches run 15 inches deep, their edges suspiciously sharp for erosion over millennia. Experimental archaeologists have recreated the process using period tools, proving it's possible, but the real question is motivation. Were these offerings to gods who walked the sky, a cry for water etched into the earth itself? The most haunting clue lies in the Nazca's own fate. By 600 CE, their society collapsed, possibly due to climate change. The lines, meanwhile, endured a whisper from a civilization that knew how to speak to the future. Even if we're still learning their language, modern pilots flying over the desert still report something eerie. In the right light, the glyphs seem to shimmer, as if illuminated from below. Whether star maps or alien greeting cards, one thing's certain: the Nazca didn't just draw in the sand. They wrote a message we've yet to fully read. Deep in the vaults of museums and private collections around the world, a set of eerie artifacts glimmers under display lights, the so-called crystal skulls. Carved from single blocks of clear or milky quartz, these human-sized craniums first surfaced in the late 19th century, touted as sacred relics of the Aztecs or Maya, imbued with mystical powers of prophecy and healing. But when scientists finally put them under the microscope, they uncovered a truth stranger than fiction. Some of these skulls weren't ancient at all. They were elaborate fakes sculpted with 19th century jewelers' tools. Yet a handful still resist easy explanation, their origins as opaque as the quartz they're carved from. Take the most famous of them all, the Mitchell Hedges skull, named after adventurer F. A. Mitchell Hedges, who claimed his daughter found it in a Mayan temple in 1924. Its jawbone detaches like a real skull's, and under magnification, the surface shows no visible tool marks, something that should be impossible without modern precision equipment. But here's where things get murky. In 2008, researchers at London's British Museum examined similar skulls using electron microscopes and found telltale scratches from rotary wheels, a technology unavailable to pre-Columbian civilizations. The conclusion: most were likely crafted in Germany between 1867 and 1880, during a craze for antiquities sold to European collectors. Yet the Mitchell Hedges skull refuses to fit neatly into this narrative. Light refraction tests reveal something peculiar. The quartz's molecular structure suggests it originated in Brazil's remote Minas Gerais region, far from known Mesoamerican trade routes. Even stranger, when placed under certain lighting conditions, the eye sockets act like prisms, projecting beams that align with celestial events like solstices. Indigenous oral histories from Belize, where the skull was allegedly found, speak of singing stones used by shamans to communicate with spirits. Could this be one of them? Or is it simply an exceptionally well-made hoax crafted by a master artisan whose techniques we've yet to decode? The real mystery isn't just who made these skulls, it's why they captivate us. From Indiana Jones films to New Age lore, they've become symbols of lost wisdom and otherworldly technology. Perhaps that's their true power, not as artifacts of the past, but as mirrors reflecting our endless hunger for mystery. After all, in a world where science explains so much, there's still something thrilling about holding an object that whispers, "You don't know everything yet." And maybe that's enough. Peering into the peat bogs of northern Europe, you might mistake them for sleepy, unremarkable wetlands until you discover what the acidic, oxygen-starved waters have been hiding for centuries. Here, in the cold embrace of the marshlands, time stands still. The bog bodies, hundreds of remarkably preserved Iron Age corpses, emerge from the depths like ghostly visitors from another era, their skin darkened to leather, features so intact you can still read the expressions frozen on their faces. But these aren't peaceful burials. Each one tells a story of violence, nooses around necks, slit throats, skulls crushed. And the question that haunts researchers isn't just how they died, but why. Were they revered offerings to ancient gods or the victims of brutal justice? Take Toland Man, pulled from a Danish bog in 1950 with such startling clarity that the men who found him thought they'd stumbled upon a recent murder. The rope around his neck, woven from animal hide, still bit into his skin. His eyelids were gently closed, his stubble preserved, even the wrinkles on his forehead etched as if he'd merely fallen asleep. Yet this was no accident. Radiocarbon dating placed his death around 350 BCE, and his last meal, a gruel of barley and flaxseed, contained traces of mistletoe, a plant sacred to the Celts and often linked to ritual sacrifice. The eerie serenity of his face suggests something ceremonial, almost reverent about his passing, but not all bog bodies fit this mold. Contrast him with Lindo Man, discovered in an English peat bog in 1984. His end was anything but peaceful. Analysis revealed blows to the head, a broken neck, a garrote still embedded in his throat, and stab wounds, a textbook case of overkill. His stomach held traces of charred bread, possibly a final feast, laced with toxic ergot fungus, hinting at a forced, hallucinogenic send-off. Was this punishment for a crime? Tribal records describe threefold deaths reserved for traitors or oath-breakers where the method mirrored the transgression. A thief's hand severed, a liar's tongue cut out. Lindo Man's brutal end suggests he might have been judged harshly by his community. The bogs themselves offer chilling clues. These weren't random dumping grounds, but liminal spaces, thresholds between the earthly and the divine. Iron Age people saw them as gateways to the other world, places where sacrifices could bridge the gap between humans and deities. The tannins in the water, which preserve flesh but dissolve bones, add another layer of mystery. Toland Man's fingers are so well preserved you can see his fingerprints, yet his skeleton has nearly vanished. It's as if the bogs were selectively immortalizing these individuals, keeping their stories alive in fragments. Modern forensic techniques peel back even more layers. CT scans of Grobel Man, another Danish bog body, revealed his throat was slit ear to ear with such force it nearly decapitated him. Yet his hands show no defensive wounds, implying he didn't struggle. Isotope analysis of his teeth tells us he traveled far from his birthplace before dying, raising questions. Was he a captured warrior, a wandering priest, or a chosen volunteer? The answers may lie in the broader cultural context. Roman historian Tacitus wrote of Germanic tribes sacrificing humans to Nerthus, an earth goddess, during times of famine or war. Could these bodies be desperate pleas for fertility or victory? Their deaths a grim transaction with the gods. What lingers most isn't just the violence, but the intimacy of it. These weren't distant, impersonal killings. The care taken in arranging some bodies, Toland Man's folded limbs, the woven textiles draped over Winderby Girl, suggests a ritualistic farewell. Yet the sheer variety of methods, from strangulation to drowning to blunt force trauma, implies no single explanation fits all. Perhaps the bogs were both altar and execution ground, a place where the sacred and the profane intertwined. One thing's certain, these faces from the past refuse to let us look away. When you stare into Toland Man's quiet visage, you're not just seeing a corpse, you're confronting the universal human capacity for both reverence and cruelty, a duality etched as deeply into our history as the bog's indelible stain on his skin. And that's a mystery no amount of preservation can fully resolve. Scattered across Costa Rica's lush rainforests and river deltas lie hundreds of near-perfect stone spheres, some as small as a grapefruit, others towering taller than a man and weighing up to 16 tons. Carved with uncanny precision by the Decode culture between 300 and 1500 CE, these orbs are so flawlessly rounded that modern engineers struggle to explain how ancient artisans achieved such symmetry without metal tools or mathematical blueprints. Found in clusters, lone sentinels, or half-buried like sleeping giants, their purpose remains one of archaeology's most elegant enigmas. Were they cosmic maps guiding ceremonies, markers of elite power, or something far more enigmatic? Start with the craftsmanship. Each sphere was painstakingly pecked and polished from gabbro or limestone, materials often hauled miles from quarries through dense jungle. Experiments using traditional methods show creating even a small sphere would take months of relentless grinding with stone hammers, yet the largest specimens are precise to within 2 millimeters of perfect roundness. How indigenous oral histories speak of a liquid stone recipe, possibly a plant-based solution that softened rock temporarily, though no chemical traces survive. Modern laser scans reveal another oddity. Many spheres align along cardinal directions or cluster in geometric patterns, suggesting deliberate placement rather than random display. Then there's the celestial theory. At sites like Finca Sixaiola, spheres are arranged in lines matching solstice sunrises or the Orion constellation's belt. Archaeoastronomers note that certain groupings mirror the Decode's agricultural calendar, potentially serving as stone calendars to predict floods or planting cycles. But skepticism lingers. The Spanish conquest displaced the Decode's people, severing direct cultural memory, and looters rolled many spheres from their original positions over centuries. Without exact pre-Columbian layouts, astronomical claims remain speculative. Status symbols offer a compelling alternative. Excavations at El Silencio, home to the largest known sphere, uncovered gold ornaments and elite burials nearby, hinting the orbs marked political or sacred sites. Ethnographic parallels with Panama's Ngeb people suggest such spheres might represent the cosmos itself, earthly embodiments of celestial power owned by chiefs or shamans. Yet others argue their function shifted over time, serving as boundary markers, trade icons, or even gaming pieces in ritual competitions, the most haunting twist. Many spheres were found near starfruit trees, considered portals to the spirit world in Decode's cosmology. Some locals still whisper that the stones move at night, returning to hidden jungle clearings where their makers await. Science dismisses this, of course, but when you stand beside one, feeling the weight of its silent perfection, it's hard not to wonder if we've underestimated the hands that shaped them. After all, true mastery leaves no fingerprints, and that's the sphere's final secret. The longer you stare, the less you see. Discovered in a shadowy cave near the Dead Sea in 1952, the Copper Scroll stands apart from its famous parchment cousins. The Dead Sea Scrolls, in one electrifying way, it isn't a spiritual text but a treasure map. Unlike the other scrolls, which whisper of ancient prophecies and religious rites, this one crackles with the weight of tangible riches, listing 64 hiding places where unimaginable wealth from Jerusalem's Second Temple might still lie buried. Etched onto brittle sheets of copper to defy time's decay, its Hebrew script spells out locations with cryptic precision. In the ruin that is in the valley of Achor, under the steps leading east, 40 cubits, a chest of silver and its vessels weighing 17 talents. Yet for all its specificity, the scroll taunts modern seekers with maddening ambiguity. Which ruin, which valley? The answers might lie beneath the dust of centuries, waiting for the right pair of hands to uncover them. What makes this artifact so magnetic isn't just the promise of gold, it's the forensic challenge of decoding its clues. The scroll's language lacks the poetic flourishes of scripture, reading instead like a priestly inventory scrawled in haste. Measurements are given in cubits and talents, ancient units that convert roughly to 18 inches and 75 pounds respectively. But the landmarks referenced Solomon's Canal, the Colet Ravine, have either vanished or bear different names today. Modern archaeologists wield everything from ground-penetrating radar to AI-powered linguistic analysis to triangulate possible sites. One tantalizing lead points to the Judean desert's Wadi Murabat, where a team in 2019 uncovered a cave with iron pickaxes and empty recesses in the walls, as if looters beat them to the prize centuries ago. Then there's the scroll's eerie duality. While most Dead Sea Scrolls are linked to the ascetic Essenes, the Copper Scroll's pragmatic tone suggests a different author. Perhaps a temple priest fleeing Rome's destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE, desperate to safeguard sacred relics from pillaging legions. The treasures listed are staggering, over 126 tons of silver and gold, including ritual objects like incense shovels and priestly vestments. Historians debate whether these were real holdings or aspirational records, but the scroll's material hints at urgency. Copper was costly and labor-intensive to engrave. Someone believed this list was worth preserving at all costs. Theories about the treasure's fate range from the pragmatic to the fantastical. Some scholars argue the Romans already found and melted down the hoard, citing Josephus' accounts of Titus plundering Jerusalem's wealth. Others believe devout Jews recovered portions during the Bar Kokhba revolt, hiding them anew. More fringe ideas suggest the Knights Templar later spirited the treasure to Europe, or that the scroll itself is a red herring, a decoy to distract invaders from the real cache. Yet hope flickers in unexpected places. In 2021, researchers using multispectral imaging uncovered previously invisible markings on the scroll's edges, possibly indicating directional clues. Animated reconstructions bring these leads to life, overlaying the scroll's text onto 3D terrain models of the Judean wilderness. One sequence zeroes in on Mount Gerizim, where a 1st-century staircase matches the description of a hiding spot. Another highlights the ruins of Qumran itself, where a sealed chamber beneath the scriptorium remains unexplored. The Copper Scroll's true power lies in what it represents, not just lost gold, but the fragility of history itself. Every word is a thread tugging us backward, daring us to solve a puzzle whose original players left no key. Whether the treasures still exist or were scattered to the winds millennia ago, the hunt continues, driven by the same question that haunts all great mysteries. What if this time we're the ones who finally see what others missed? And so the scroll waits, its green-tinged surface gleaming faintly under museum lights, still guarding secrets in plain sight. In the autumn of harvest season in the 12th century, villagers near the English town of Woolpit made a discovery that would echo through history: a pair of children, brother and sister, with skin the color of young willow leaves, huddled in a wolf pit near the fields. Their clothes were strange, woven from an unrecognizable fabric, and their speech was a jumble of sounds no local could decipher. But the most unsettling detail: their skin wasn't just tinged green, it glowed as if lit from within. The villagers took them in, baptizing the boy and girl into the Christian faith, but the children refused all food until someone brought them raw beans still in their pods, the only thing they would eat at first. Medieval chroniclers like William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall recorded the event with meticulous curiosity. The children eventually learned to speak English, and their story tumbled out in fragments. They claimed to come from a land called St. Martin's, where the sun never rose and the light was perpetual twilight. They described crossing a cavern or tunnel, following the sound of bells, before emerging disoriented into the blinding brightness of Woolpit's fields. The boy, sickly from the start, died within months, but the girl, named Agnes, adapted, her green hue fading over time as she assimilated into English life. Later in life, she married a local man, though some whispered she never fully lost the distant look in her eyes. Modern theories swing between the plausible and the extraordinary. Historians like Paul Harris propose the children were Flemish immigrants, orphaned during a bloody purge of their community by King Henry Roman II, the green skin. Possibly argyria, a condition caused by malnutrition or exposure to silver compounds, giving flesh a grayish-green cast. Their twilight land might have been the dense, shaded forests of Flanders, and their strange speech a dialect of Dutch. Even their fixation on beans makes sense. Flemish diets relied heavily on legumes, but then there's the other interpretation, the one that sends chills down spines. Could the children have stumbled from a parallel universe, as astrophysicists like Carl Sagan once mused? Medieval illustrations depict them emerging from what looks like a cave mouth wreathed in vines, their emerald skin contrasting starkly with the pale villagers. Some researchers draw eerie parallels to modern accounts of alien encounters, where beings describe subterranean worlds and aversion to sunlight. The girl's description of her homeland's perpetual dimness aligns unnervingly with theories of a hollow earth or even a dimension where physics bend differently. The Woolpit mystery lingers because it straddles the line between folklore and forensic fact. Unlike purely mythological tales, this one was documented by sober medieval scholars who treated it as a genuine anomaly. The children's integration into society, Agnes's marriage, her fading pigmentation grounds the story in reality, even as their origins spiral into the speculative. Were they refugees, lost travelers, or something far stranger? Their tale whispers an unsettling truth. Sometimes the past holds onto its secrets not by hiding them, but by leaving them out in the open, glowing faintly green, just waiting for someone to ask the right questions. Rising from a rural Georgia field like a modern-day Stonehenge, the Georgia Guidestones have sparked fascination and fury since their appearance in 1980. Towering 19 feet tall, these 6 granite slabs bear cryptic messages etched in 8 languages: English, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, Arabic, Hebrew, Hindi, and Swahili, a deliberate echo of humanity's linguistic diversity. But it's the 10 Commandments carved into the stones that ignite debate, each one reading like instructions for rebuilding civilization after an apocalyptic collapse. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. The words pulse with eerie prescience, blending environmental warnings with chilling utopian ideals. The monument's origins only deepen the enigma, a well-dressed man calling himself R. C. Christian, later revealed to be a pseudonym referencing the legendary Rosicrucian order, commissioned the stones through an Elberton granite company, paying with untraceable cash. He claimed to represent a small group of loyal Americans planning for humanity's future, vanishing as mysteriously as he arrived. Engineers still marvel at the precision of the Guidestone's construction. The slabs align with celestial events like solstices and equinoxes, while a slot in the capstone channels sunlight to mark noon. Some see it as a doomsday clock, others a beacon for a new age. Controversy erupted immediately. Conspiracy theorists branded it a New World Order manifesto, citing parallels to eugenics and population control. Christian survivalists decried its call for international courts, while neo-pagans hailed it as a sacred text. The stones became a pilgrimage site for everyone from ufologists to libertarians, each interpreting its words through their own apocalyptic lens. Then, in July 2022, an explosion tore through the monument at dawn, hours before a scheduled demolition by state officials citing safety concerns. Security footage showed shadowy figures planting devices, but no group claimed responsibility. The blast left only one slab standing, its inscription scorched but still legible. Be not a cancer on the earth, leave room for nature, leave room for nature. Forensic analysis of the wreckage raised more questions. Fragments bore tool marks inconsistent with the original 1980s construction, suggesting tampering over the decades. Declassified FBI files hint at a 1981 investigation into threats against the stones, while local rumors whisper of midnight ceremonies conducted by robed figures in the years before the bombing. Was this a silencing, a ritual, or both? Today, the Guidestones' remnants rest in storage, their fate uncertain. But their legacy lingers in the uneasy questions they posed. Were they a warning, a prophecy, or a blueprint? And in a world hurtling toward climate crisis and geopolitical fracture, why did someone feel the need to blow up a message that urged us, above all, to prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite? The stones may lie broken, but their ghost still whispers across the Georgia clay, demanding we listen before it's too late. The first sighting struck like a thunderclap on a clear November night in 1966. Two young couples driving past an abandoned TNT factory near Point Pleasant, West Virginia, slammed their brakes when a towering figure lurched from the shadows, not a man, but something close. 7 feet tall, with wings folded like a cape and glowing red eyes that seemed to bore into their souls. When it spread those massive wings and lifted into the sky without a sound, they knew this was no escaped zoo animal. Within weeks, dozens reported similar encounters across the Ohio River Valley. A pharmacist saw it perched on a rooftop, silhouetted against the moon. A farmer claimed it stalked his fields at dusk, moving faster than any bird should. And then, on December 15th, the Silver Bridge collapsed during rush hour, plunging 46 cars into the icy water below. Eyewitness sketches from the era showed chilling consistency: a sinewy, gray-skinned humanoid with a wingspan rivaling a small plane. Descriptions of those pulsating red eyes appear in nearly every account, some witnesses insisting the gaze induced migraines or visions of impending doom. Cryptozoologists argue the creature fits ancient global motifs of winged omens, from the Cherokee spearfinger to the Irish banshee. Skeptics counter with a mundane culprit: sandhill cranes. These large, grayish birds native to the region stand 5 feet tall with red facial markings, and their eerie, rattling calls could explain auditory hallucinations. But crane experts quickly note flaws: sandhills don't glow, don't fly at night, and certainly don't hover outside windows with malicious intent. The Mothman's most unsettling aspect wasn't its appearance, but its apparent precognition. Multiple witnesses reported seeing it days before the bridge disaster, often near electrical infrastructure. Declassified documents later revealed the area housed a secret Cold War experiment called Project Grudge, testing psychological warfare tactics. Coincidence or something darker? Paranormal researchers highlight electromagnetic anomalies during sightings, linking them to window areas where dimensional barriers thin. Others propose a tulpa, a thought form manifested by collective fear. The truth may lie somewhere between, where folklore and tragedy intertwine. Point Pleasant's Memorial Park now bears a steel silhouette of the creature, its red eyes forever watching the river. Not a warning, perhaps, but a reminder some mysteries refuse to stay buried, even when the bridges fall. On the 1st of December 1948, a well-dressed man was found slumped against the seawall at Somerton Beach near Adelaide, Australia. His legs crossed casually, a half-smoked cigarette resting on his collar. He showed no signs of violence, yet no identification. His pockets yielded only chewing gum, bus tickets, and a scrap of paper torn from a book, bearing the enigmatic words Tamam Shud, Persian for ended or finished. This was the Somerton Man, a mystery that would haunt Australia for decades, weaving together Cold War intrigue, secret codes, and an unidentified corpse with oddly muscular calves and strangely missing teeth. Forensics of the era revealed bizarre details. The man's spleen was enlarged, his blood contained an unidentifiable substance, and his shoes had been recently polished, yet their labels were meticulously removed. But the real twist came when detectives traced the Tamam Shud scrap to a rare copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, discovered in a car near the beach. Inside the book's back cover, someone had scribbled 5 lines of apparent code. W. Argoababd Emlioi WT Bim Panet Emliaboyak Itmsemsgab cryptographers and amateur sleuths have spun endless theories. Some see a Cold War spy cipher pointing to the book's popularity among intelligence circles. Others believe it's an acrostic love note with the first letters spelling out hidden meanings. The most chilling possibility, the final line Itmsamskab might stand for its time to move to South Australia, mostly street, goodbye and be seeing you, referencing a local address tied to a woman named Jessica Thompson, a ballet dancer who reportedly reacted with visible shock when shown the dead man's bust. Thompson's connection deepens the intrigue. She claimed not to recognize the Somerton man, yet her own son, Robin, bore an uncanny resemblance to the corpse, including the same rare genetic tooth anomaly. Years later, Robin would become a ballet prodigy, fueling speculation that the dead man was his biological father, possibly a Soviet spy or jilted lover. Jessica took her secrets to the grave, but in 2022, DNA extracted from hairs in the original death mask finally cracked part of the case. Genetic genealogists identified the Somerton man as likely having ancestors in Melbourne's European immigrant community, though his name remains elusive. Modern facial reconstruction technology has given us a haunting glimpse of the man's features: sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and an expression caught between serenity and sorrow. The code, however, resists all cracking attempts, even with supercomputers. Was it a random jumble, a personal cipher, or a message meant for one specific person? The Somerton man's story lingers because it's more than a whodunit. It's a mirror reflecting our own longing for closure. Every breakthrough raises new questions. Every decoded letter leads to another locked door, and that scrap of paper, brittle with age, still whispers its final, untranslatable truth, Tamam Shud. It is ended, or is it, locked away in Yale's Bainach Library? The Voynich Manuscript's pages pulse with secrets that have defied centuries of scrutiny, but recent breakthroughs might finally be cracking its impenetrable code. A radical new theory gaining traction among linguists suggests the manuscript isn't European at all, but a Mesoamerican artifact written in a lost dialect of Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs. Dr. Gerard Cheshire, a University of Bristol researcher, made waves in 2019 when he proposed the script encodes an extinct form of Proto-Romance. But now, a team from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology argues the symbols align startlingly well with Nahuatl pictograms. Their analysis points to Folio 25, where a drawing of a plant with jagged leaves resembles the Yachtli flower, a sacred Aztec herb used in rituals. Even more compelling, the text's repetitive word endings match Nahuatl's agglutinative structure, where suffixes stack like building blocks to modify meaning. Cryptographers examining the herbal section, those baffling pages brimming with unidentifiable flora, are testing this theory against known Aztec medicinal texts. Dr. Maria Isabel Campos, a botanist specializing in pre-Columbian remedies, notes that Folio 33's bulbous root could depict Cacaloxychitl, a plant the Aztecs used to treat heart palpitations. Another illustration shows a vine with star-shaped flowers, eerily similar to Cononopilli, a hallucinogen administered by Aztec shamans. If correct, this would explain why European scholars couldn't match the plants to their herbals. They were looking in the wrong hemisphere entirely. Yet skeptics highlight glaring inconsistencies. The manuscript's Zodiac section, complete with European-style nymphs bathing in green pools, seems irreconcilable with Mesoamerican cosmology. Radiocarbon dating also places the vellum firmly in 15th century Italy, not post-conquest Mexico. But proponents counter that the Nahuatl theory doesn't require the book to be Aztec-made. It could be a colonial-era hybrid, crafted by an indigenous scribe under European patronage, blending traditions into something entirely new. The most tantalizing clue lies in the marginalia. High-resolution scans reveal faint Nahuatl numerals, dots and bars. peeking through stains on folio 86, suggesting the original author might have been translating or adapting an older Mesoamerican codex. Imagine a scenario where a Spanish friar, fascinated by indigenous knowledge, commissioned a bilingual herbalist to document Aztec remedies using a cipher to protect sacred information from the Inquisition. This would explain the manuscript's deliberate obscurity, not as a hoax but as an act of cultural preservation. As supercomputers parse the text for Nahuatl cognates and botanists cross-reference plants in surviving codices, one thing becomes clear: the Voynich isn't just a puzzle. It's a palimpsest of histories, a bridge between worlds that might rewrite our understanding of how knowledge survived when empires collided. And perhaps beneath those inscrutable symbols lies not just a language waiting to be decoded, but a story of resistance, resilience, and the desperate, beautiful act of remembering. Meanwhile, cryptographers are turning to AI-trained algorithms, feeding them thousands of Nahuatl texts to detect patterns invisible to the human eye. Early results show clusters of symbols corresponding to medicinal terms like Patli medicine and Zihuatl herb, though full translation remains elusive. The manuscript's notorious nymphs, those nude figures wading in intricate tubes, might represent Temazcali sweat baths central to Aztec healing rituals. Even the astrological diagrams could mirror the Tonalpohualli, the sacred Aztec calendar governing plant harvesting. But here's the twist: if the Voynich truly encodes Nahuatl knowledge, why does its art style scream Renaissance Europe? The answer might lie in the chaotic aftermath of Cortés' invasion. Indigenous scribes trained in the Tlacuilo tradition of pictorial writing often collaborated with European artists to create hybrid documents like the Florentine Codex. The Voynich could be another such collaboration, its exotic plants drawn from memory by a Nahua healer, while an Italian artist rendered them in familiar stylistic flourishes. As debates rage, one fact endures: the manuscript refuses to surrender its secrets easily. Every breakthrough births new questions, every theory a fresh contradiction. Whether it's a Nahuatl herbal concealed for survival, an alchemist's fever dream, or something beyond our current frameworks, the Voynich remains a mirror. Stare into its pages long enough, and you'll see not just Inkai symbols, but the reflection of our own insatiable hunger to understand, and the haunting possibility that some truths are meant to stay just out of reach. After the crew vanished, the Mary Celeste became a floating specter, a vessel so drenched in misfortune that even seasoned sailors crossed themselves at the mention of her name. The ship passed through 12 different owners in just 13 years, each convinced they could break the curse, only to watch their fortunes sink alongside her. Crews reported unnerving phenomena: barrels shifting in empty holds, the smell of phantom fires below deck, and compass needles spinning wildly even in calm seas. By 1879, her reputation had grown so sinister that a Newfoundland captain refused to board her without a priest's blessing, claiming he'd seen shadowy figures pacing the quarterdeck at dusk. Insurance records from the era read like a litany of disasters. In 1880, she collided with a fishing schooner off Nova Scotia, an accident witnesses called impossible given the clear weather. 2 years later, her hold inexplicably flooded during a routine cargo run, nearly drowning the crew. Then came the final indignity. A Boston-based consortium purchased her in 1884, only to discover the hull crawling with rot no surveyor had spotted. Desperate to recoup losses, they hatched a plan straight from a penny dreadful scuttling her for the insurance payout. On January 3, 1885, the Mary Celeste's final captain, a hard-bitten mariner named Edgar Tuthill, deliberately ran her aground on Haiti's Rochelle Reef. But even in destruction, the ship seemed to fight back. Instead of sinking neatly as planned, she clung to the rocks for days, her broken masts jutting from the waves like defiant fingers. Investigators quickly smelled fraud, noting the cargo of salted fish had been suspiciously overinsured. Yet before charges could be filed, a hurricane finished what Tuthill started, scattering the wreck across the seafloor. Divers rediscovered the debris field in 2001, revealing twisted iron and teak planks encrusted with coral. The most haunting find, a single intact bottle wedged between rocks, its cork still sealed, perhaps the very one that once held the imaginary poison blamed for the crew's disappearance. Today, the Mary Celeste lives on not as wood and nails, but as a cautionary tale about the sea's unforgiving whims. Some say her ghost still drifts on moonless nights, forever searching for the soul she lost, or the truth she still won't surrender. The dancing plague of 1518 might seem like a relic of superstition until you realize its echoes reverberate in modern hospitals and headlines. What Strasbourg witnessed wasn't just medieval hysteria. It was an early case study in the terrifying power of the mind to rewrite reality. Fast forward 5 centuries and you'll find eerily similar phenomena. Office workers suddenly collapsing with Havana Syndrome's phantom shocks, students in Tanzania fainting in cascading waves, or even the 1962 Tanganyika laughter epidemic that shut down schools for months. These aren't coincidences. They're proof that the dancing plague's legacy lives on in a condition neurologists now call mass psychogenic illness, a cascade of physical symptoms with no organic cause, spread by the invisible contagion of fear. Neurologist Dr. Robert Bartholomew, who studied outbreaks from Kosovo to Korea, explains the mechanism. Under extreme stress, the brain can short-circuit sensory processing. One person's convulsions or dizziness becomes a template for others' subconscious minds to mimic. Imagine a chain reaction where shared trauma, whether it's 16th century famine or 21st century pandemic anxiety, overloads the nervous system until it manufactures its own crisis. Brain scans during these events show hyperactivity in the anterior cingulate cortex, the region governing pain perception, while the prefrontal cortex responsible for rational judgment goes eerily quiet. It's as if the brain flips a switch, prioritizing collective survival over individual logic. The parallels between Strasbourg's dancers and modern cases are uncanny. Take the 2016 Cuban sonic attacks, where diplomats reported headaches and memory loss despite no detectable weapon. Like the dancing plague, investigations found no physical trigger, just a perfect storm of political tension and hypervigilance. Or consider the 2011 Leroy, New York high school cluster, where teenage girls developed involuntary tics eerily reminiscent of those medieval convulsions. Treatment, not antipsychotics, but therapy and reassurance, breaking the cycle of amplified fear. Yet the most haunting lesson lies in the cure Strasbourg never discovered. Modern medicine now knows that separating affected individuals, as opposed to corralling dancers on stages, can halt psychogenic outbreaks, the tragedy. Those 16th century citizens might have survived if they'd been treated with isolation instead of music. That's the real horror lurking behind these mysteries. Sometimes the cure is counterintuitive, and the greatest threat isn't poison or pathogens, but the stories we tell ourselves. And in a world drowning in viral misinformation, that's a diagnosis worth remembering. The Tunguska event didn't just flatten forests, it reshaped humanity's understanding of cosmic threats. When that fireball exploded over Siberia in 1908, it unleashed energy equivalent to 10 to 15 megatons of TNT, roughly 1,000 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. Yet for decades, scientists struggled to explain how something so destructive left no crater or identifiable fragments. The leading theory today suggests a stony meteoroid, roughly 200 feet wide, disintegrated in a mid-air blast 3 to 6 miles above the surface, its shockwave mimicking a thermonuclear detonation. But the real legacy of Tunguska lies in how it forced us to confront a terrifying truth. Earth exists in a cosmic shooting gallery, and we're only just learning to dodge the bullets. Enter NAS, a Planetary Defense Coordination Office, established in 2016 with one mission to prevent history from repeating itself. Their flagship project, DART Double Asteroid Redirection Test, reads like science fiction turned reality. In 2022, a spacecraft the size of a vending machine slammed into Dimorphos, a small asteroid 7 million miles away, altering its orbit by 32 minutes. This marked humanity's first successful attempt at asteroid deflection, and the shadow of Tunguska loomed over every calculation. Engineers studied the Siberian blast's pressure waves to model potential impact scenarios, recognizing that even smaller objects could devastate entire regions if they struck near populated areas. The urgency became undeniable in 2013 when a 65-foot meteor blazed over Chelyabinsk, Russia. Declassified dashcam footage shows the morning sky split by a fireball brighter than the sun, its shockwave shattering thousands of windows and injuring over 1,600 people. With an estimated yield of 500 kilotons, the Chelyabinsk meteor was 30 times more powerful than Hiroshima, yet it was a pebble compared to Tunguska. What linked these events wasn't just their Russian geography, but the sobering revelation that neither was detected beforehand. Unlike Hollywood's doomsday fantasies, real asteroids often approach from the sun's glare, rendering them invisible to telescopes until it's too late. Modern tracking systems now monitor over 90% of near-Earth objects larger than half a mile wide, the civilization killers. But Tunguska-sized objects capable of leveling entire cities remain 80% undocumented. Projects like the Vera C. Rubin Observatory in Chile aim to close this gap by scanning the sky nightly with a 3 billion pixel camera, while the European Space Agency's Hera mission will study DART impact crater to refine deflection techniques. The challenge isn't just spotting threats but acting in time. A 2024 simulation by NASA, a jet propulsion laboratory, revealed an unsettling scenario. Even with 5 years warning, current technology might not stop an incoming Tunguska-class object without international cooperation. But here's the twist: Tunguska's greatest gift might be the cultural shift it ignited. Before 1908, asteroid impacts were dismissed as fantasy. Today, they're classified alongside pandemics and nuclear war as existential risks. The United Nations designates June 30th as International Asteroid Day, commemorating the Tunguska event not as a curiosity, but as a warning etched in scorched tree rings. The same blast that once sparked UFO conspiracies now fuels scientific collaboration, proving that sometimes the most destructive forces can also be the ones that bring us together, not in fear, but in the shared pursuit of survival. And if history is any guide, the next cosmic wake-up call isn't a matter of if, but when. The only question is whether we'll be ready to answer. From the vanished crew of the Mary Celeste to the encrypted taunts of the Zodiac killer, these 30 unsolved mysteries share one haunting trait: they refuse to surrender their secrets. Each one is a locked door with no key, a riddle whispered just beyond our understanding. Think about the precision of the Antikythera Mechanism, a device centuries ahead of its time, or the Dyatlov Pass incident where experienced hikers fled their tent into sub-zero darkness as if escaping something unimaginable. Why does Amelia Earhart's disappearance still captivate us nearly a century later? Why does the Voynich Manuscript, with its unreadable script and impossible plans, defy every codebreaker who dares to crack it? The truth is, these mysteries do more than puzzle us. They expose something fundamental about humanity. We're wired to seek answers, to stitch order from chaos. When confronted with the unknown, we can't help but lean in, squinting at the shadows for clues. It's why we obsess over Oak Island's booby-trapped money pit or the green-skinned children of Woolpit. These aren't just historical footnotes, they're mirrors reflecting our deepest fears and fascinations. What if some questions exist solely to remind us that the world is stranger, darker, and more wondrous than we've been taught? Now, we want to hear from you. Which of these enigmas kept you up at night? Drop your vote in the poll below. Should we dive deeper into the Bermuda Triangle's vanishing ships, or dissect the chilling conspiracy behind the Georgia Guidestones' destruction? And stay tuned, because our next journey will venture into the realm of the supernatural, where ghost ships, phantom hitchhikers, and inexplicable phenomena blur the line between this world and whatever lies beyond. Until then, keep questioning, keep wondering, and remember, the greatest stories aren't the ones with endings, but the ones that leave us